Hi, my name is Eric, and I thought today we would talk about living with someone that has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And for some of you, you may not know what that term is, but the diagnosis. Bipolar disorder, you have one and two, and then you have bipolar with schizophrenic traits. Now, the bipolar that I encounter is one where when she goes manic, very delusional, spendthrift, uh, starts doing crazy things. And some of the things that I had to put in place, because in the early days, anytime that she would go manic and end up hospitalized, I used to hold myself responsible, like I was doing something wrong, or I didn't do enough, or I didn't this, I didn't that. Instead of laying the blame where it needed to be, and that was on her illness. I mean, I can remember in the early days where she was meeting with the president, uh, Oprah. See, I mean, all these different people, but it was delusional. It was in her mind while she was in the hospital, and there were times where she didn't even know who I was. You know, her husband, and I used to take that very personal. You know, and it became in the early days, it became more like a codependency where I just was constantly trying to figure out how to get ahead of her so that she couldn't do this or she couldn't do that. And it was hard. I had a lot of family support on her side that had a good understanding. They dealt with it since she was in her teens. Um, on numerous occasions, one of her parents or both would come up and they would stay with me and visit Kath in the hospital. And then it became where only one, where her father would come up. And as they got older, uh, her younger sister stepped up and has been a great support dealing with it. I like the straight to the point, no BS. This is the way it is. Love those kind of people. So what do you do? Especially the first thing you do is you try to insulate. You try to keep everything that's going on in your household a secret because you don't want people to know what she's going through. Because once she's done with her manic episode, she won't remember any of it. At least in our case, she didn't. Very little. And in the early days, I tried being her husband, therapist, psychiatrist, and everything in between. I was doing a lot of research. I was reading on meds. I was trying to tell psychiatrists what to prescribe because they would throw their hands in the air and say, "What do you expect me to do?" That opened the door for me to become a psychiatrist. But you know what? I wasn't a good psychiatrist because I didn't know because I was too close to it. That's the truth. And they knew it, but they needed me to get that through my head. And they couldn't understand while I was blaming myself for what was going on with her. What I can tell you is that it's harder on the spouse or loved one dealing with what's going on with their partner or a family member with bipolar than it is the person that's suffering from bipolar. I know a few bipolar people can say, oh, that's not wrong. We suffer more. No, you don't. You have no clue what we go through. You have no clue how we have to pick up the pieces behind you. None. And you want to know why you don't have any clue? Because we don't want to upset you. We don't want you to feel bad. And I know you people out there that are, spouses and family members are shaking your head yes. Because it can cause a lot of drama. You're running around chasing fires trying to put them out that person has started. And at times, most of the time, you feel alone with it. And you start to have issues. But what do we really need to do? I can tell you what I did that helped some, but I've been dealing now with it for over 20 years. And some of you are just getting in new relationships with that significant other person, got a cold, or that other person that's been diagnosed. But some of the rules that I finally had to put in place while you're under this roof, you will take your medications as prescribed. No more, no less. If the medications are making you feel whatever and you don't like it, talk to your psychiatrist, talk to your therapist. But if this script says take one in the morning, one at night, that's all you're getting. You're not getting one in the middle of the day because you're feeling overwhelmed. Only as prescribed, no more, no less. Alcohol, sorry. Drugs, sorry. Because that's not going to help you. And if anything, that's just going to cause you to go into a downward spiral. Terrible. Because a lot of people that aren't in treatment, that's what they first start off with, is they start drinking and using to try to cover up, to not feel the way that they feel. But that was rule one. Rule two is I take care of all the finances. And at one point, I had to pull her credit cards because she was buying things when she shouldn't have and then regretted it afterwards. They will wipe you out in their mania, thinking that they have all this money. And then when they finally come down, here you are, your checkbook is empty, you got credit cards up the yin yang. So you need to control the finances. If you want to set up a separate account where there's one account with both your names on it and give that person a debit card, transfer so much money over at a time. Don't give them access to the household account or you will end up with nothing. The third thing that I tried to do in the house was you need to go to your appointments as scheduled until we hit COVID. And then that kind of put a snafu per se. Yeah. And now, I mean, a lot of psychiatrists are using Zoom, to talk with patients. Same thing with therapists. I don't know. I'm the type of person that I get a good read when I'm sitting in front of somebody versus looking at a screen. You know, but if it works, it works. Hey, And the other thing was, you know, if at any time in her mania that she stepped outside of the relationship, we were done. That was a given. I wasn't going to tolerate it. Those are a few things you can do as a caregiver. You know, I know you need to discuss these things when they're not in a manic or depressed state, when they're, what I call at their best. And when they're at their best, they'll understand what you're trying to do, and they will help you. They will help facilitate that, because the last thing they want is to drain all the money from your household account. Hospitalizations. I always dreaded. I would let things get too far, you know, and then once it was that far, the only other option was hospitalization. I can remember on one manic episode that she thought she could smell gas in the house, and she felt that someone was trying to blow the house up. So she loaded herself up with the dog, which was 7 months old, German Shepherd, got in the car. She had access to credit cards at the time. And she got about 80 miles away, 90 miles away. And she was very confused at a McDonald's. And they called law enforcement. And they ended up taking her to one of the bigger hospitals for mental health. And they let her sign out AMA, which is under, they won't hold the hospital. And she used her credit card, to sign into a hotel down there. All she had in her head was that the house was going to blow up and she had to save herself and the dog. None of it was true. Oh yeah, it was true that she loaded the dog up, because it cost me big money to get it back from one of these dog catchers, or whatever you want to call them. I had the finances I had to pay off, credit card charges for the hotel. We had, and this is how bad it was, we had two different vehicles and two of us in each vehicle chasing her down. We finally found the car so the other person could drive the car home. And then we finally found her at the motel and talked her into coming down and going home with us. Yeah. But in her mind, it was real. But some of the things that you need to do is, and I didn't learn it until later on, was you kind of have to detach yourself. And it's not that you don't love the person, because you do. It's you're tired of being hurt. You're tired of feeling like crap. You're tired of feeling responsible, that you're the only responsible one in the house. And you're the only adult. But one thing I've always been felt strong about was quality of life. One thing I never would tolerate, nor will I today, is over medication. If your loved one is sitting there in a stupor, drooling, or having a hard time trying to hold their head up, or that, you need to sit down and talk with the psychiatrist, because there's a quality of life issue. Being drugged up so that they aren't bothering anybody, and they do that at hospitals. And common so they aren't bothering people. Quality of life is a big one for me. You know, if you aren't getting the quality of life, then why are you even here? All right, so I'm probably going to get a lot of questions about this because I know there's a lot of folks out there who have been diagnosed with bipolar. And I know that there's a lot of spouses out there that are dealing with this. And they're probably shaking their head yes. And they may have questions. You may have questions, whether you're the spouse or the one with bipolarism. I can answer either side. All right, in the comments, let me know what you think. And if you think the content that we're pushing out here on the channel is worthwhile for other people to see, could you please like and subscribe? On that note, you guys have a great day. Thanks so much for watching.